All right, so non-duality has a lot of different definitions from a lot of different cultures, and some of them can be fairly complicated, so I will do my best to describe my interpretation of this term. And the promise here is pretty big, so it's the end of psychological suffering as well as appreciating your everyday experience moment to moment significantly more. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, then let's see if we can unwrap this somewhat complex term. So some of the definitions that I've heard around this is, well, first let's define duality, and then we can kind of back into non-duality. So duality is the separation between mind and body, subject, object, self, and other. And so non-duality would be the opposite of that. So there's not mind and body, there's just body. If there's not subject object, there's just object. There's not a separation between self and other, there's just other. And that's where this non-self term comes from. It's kind of a non-duality term. And so this can get somewhat confusing, especially if you listen through the lesson 1 of this series, where I described that you are consciousness or you are awareness. And that was more of a true self interpretation of who you are. You know, you're not your actions or your thoughts or your feelings, you are consciousness. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to that lesson 1 on no self if you haven't yet. But so I thought I was consciousness, but now you're saying there's no self, or there's just object and not subject, and you being the subject. And so are you saying that I'm not consciousness now? Or if the subject that you're looking at, are you saying I'm a tree? That doesn't make any sense. I'm not a tree. I'm me. I'm consciousness, or I'm myself. And so the key difference here is that if you are consciousness, you can't at the same time be in consciousness. So the contents of your consciousness does not include yourself. Another way of describing that is to say that you are not in your experience. That's why a lot of the exercises to identify yourself as consciousness include trying to find yourself in your experience, and the fact that you can't find it means that you're not in your consciousness, you are consciousness. So another way I can describe this that has helped me out a lot is that if you can feel your consciousness, that there's probably a problem. So some analogies here are that if you can hear your ears, you typically hear ringing in your ears, and you might go to the doctor to ask if there's anything can be done about this ringing, because you're not supposed to hear your ears, you're just supposed to hear sounds. And so same thing with your eyes. If you can feel your eyes, you usually feel scratching or itching or dryness, and that's usually a problem. And another analogy, back in lesson 1 of no self, the last thing I said was that if you want to see what this is like, you could pretend that your life is a movie. So, you know, your thoughts are narrations and so on. But when you're in a movie, you usually enjoy the movie the best when you kind of forget that you're in the movie theater. You're just kind of so wrapped up in the scene, you kind of forget that you're watching a movie. And so that, I think, is the non-duality, is that your experience is actually better when you forget that you exist, or you forget the whole identifying with anything. So all that exists is your experience, and you get that same enjoyment without being distracted by the thought or feeling of having a self. So again, I started out here by saying that the promise here is that this ends psychological suffering. So you still experience the pain or the anxiety, but you're okay with it. You have this term of equanimity, that you're not angry about your stress. You just kind of just let it be, because there's no one there to suffer. If there's no self, there's no self to to experience the pain. It's your body's pain, it's not your pain. So this is some description I have specifically around pain and psychological suffering around pain. So again, words don't do experience justice. So a lot of the words that we put against pain is that I am feeling pain here, in my leg, and just setting up that sentence implies that, again, it's your pain, but if you are consciousness isn't feeling the pain, it's your body that's feeling the pain. So if you really just observe the pain from this consciousness perspective, it's actually pretty interesting. It moves, it gets more intense and less intense, and you can watch it come, you can watch it go, it's all temporary. And so, again, there's no self there to complain or to wish it weren't there or to try and push it away. It just is what it is, and it's going to be there for as long as it's going to be there. Now, obviously, if it's painful to sit in a certain way, you can sit in a different way, but there's some pain that's unavoidable, and for those occasions, this is very helpful to think about pain and suffering and identifying with consciousness and no self and non-duality. It's all helpful to, again, have equanimity with the pain. So not doing this, identifying with the pain and saying, I have pain or I am pain, or instead of seeing it from a different perspective, it just makes it worse. The pushing away, the wishing it weren't there is kind of like stubbing your toe and then hitting it again over with a hammer. It's just making it worse. And just seeing it as it is, where it is, it doesn't make the pain go away, but it lets it go away on its own without making it worse and without prolonging it. So another concern some people have with non-duality is that they think it implies that, again, I mentioned this in my first lesson, but it implies that there's no soul. And if you believe in a soul, then this can be somewhat of a problem. So let me just say that this doesn't really conflict with having a soul, if that's what you believe in. So in all the examples where if you feel your eyes or if you hear your ears, it's more pleasurable experience if that doesn't happen. If you forget that your eyes, your ears are there, if you forget that you're in the movie theater. But that doesn't mean that your eyes don't exist or your ears don't exist or that you're not in the movie theater. Those things all still exist, but it's more pleasurable if you forget that they're there. And so that's where this idea or term centerless awareness comes from, is that that's just what it feels like to be identified with consciousness, is it feels like your awareness isn't coming from behind your eyes or in your head. It's just all there, and it is where it is. And again, it's just more pleasurable experience is to just have that be all that there is and just be with that, or just be that without having this idea of a self. And so you may hear all this and still be really confused, because it's like, well, am I consciousness or do I not exist? And should I just be one with my reality, or should I pretend like I'm in a movie and just kind of watching my reality almost from a third-person perspective? And you really can do either. You can test out either and see what works best for you. I have this term here, yin and yang, because meditation kind of started out originally in more Eastern traditions, and that's where this word comes from, yin and yang. And it's really, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the symbol really represents that there are these two seemingly opposing things, which are really just two sides of the same coin. And this is somewhat hard for people to wrap their mind around or to really accept in Western traditions, because sometimes more people, especially if you think more black and white, because there's a lot of conflict that come up in everyday life. But the more you really interrogate these conflicting ideas, the more you find that they're really not conflicting, or they may even be, again, two sides of the same coin. And so, there's this billionaire hedge fund manager called Ray Dalio, who's written some good books, and he gives some good advice that if you find two good ideas that seem to be opposing each other, just take the best of both ideas. And most of the time that's possible, and it might take a little bit more thinking, but it is possible. And that's really what it comes down to in this case, is that the key is to not pretend like you're doing everything, the control center, in your head. The key is to say that all of this stuff is just happening, and I can just rest in this centerless awareness. And it's even better in some cases to forget that I'm even here, and all that there is just reality. And so again, you can play with those ideas and see what it gives you, because it could have a pretty profound effect on just how you experience your life. So I hope that helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to hear more videos like this, and I will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.